Hi, welcome back to the workshop for episode 37 of the ES335 build, and in this episode we're going to take a massive step towards getting this headstock veneer finished off by gluing the inlays in place and getting them all cleaned up. Okay, so in the last few episodes we've got the two elements of headstock decoration cut out from mother of pearl and inlaid into the headstock veneer. So the next step is to actually get them glued and stuck in place. Now, as I mentioned in the last episode, there are some gaps, especially around this logo, that are going to need filling. And to do that, I'm going to need some ebony dust. So the first thing I'm going to do is just cut off these large areas of waste around the headstock transition. And then I'll just sand some of that down on some relatively rough sandpaper until I've got enough dust to actually do this inlay work properly. So first step, get these inlays out and get it to the bandsaw. Okay, so I've got my inlays, I've got the prepared headstock veneer, I've got a load of ebony dust here. I'm not sure if that's enough, but I can always do some more. And then I've got some water thin super glue with a little tiny applicator nozzle on. I'm going to do the star first because that's the smaller one. So I'll experiment with that, see how we do, and then move on to the other one. But I'll bring you in closer so you can get a better look. Okay, so I'm going to start with the star. Now, one trick I did see on a tutorial was to actually put a bit of black Sharpie around this. Before you put the super glue on. Just draw a little bit more colour into what we're doing. And put that in position. And then I'm just going to drop a load of the ebony dust into there. Like that. Now, in theory, what should happen now is when I put the super glue onto the ebony dust, it'll draw it all in into the tiny little gaps by capillary action and glue the inlay in position. And that seems to be what's happening. I'm just going to press that in. Let's be careful that they don't float up. Now, I'm not going to use accelerator on this super glue because the accelerator has a tendency to turn everything white, and we don't want that. We want the fill to be as dark as possible. Now, normally super glue dries really quickly, but in this instance, because there's quite a bit of it down there, and there's so much wood dust, it might not dry as quickly as it otherwise would do. So I'm not going to attempt to sand this just yet. I might actually leave it overnight. But I think that's stopped moving now. And I can feel all of that dust is quite hard now. So yeah, happy with that. So now I'm going to see if I can get it even closer still, and we'll repeat that trick with the main logo. You might be able to see I actually lost the setting on the router a little bit, and I've actually gone through in a couple of places. So I'll just put a bit of blue tape on the back to stop the super glue wicking through too much. But I don't think it's going to be a problem. It'll all hold together nice and fine until we get to the point of gluing this onto the headstock, and then once it's on the headstock, it's not going anywhere. Okay, so this has been left overnight now. I've just masking taped and super glued it down to this piece of MDF just to keep it nice and flat. It was actually cupping a little bit after I glued this in, but it's not really taken much pressure to get it back down again, so I'm not worried about that. And I'm simply just going to take some 240 grit wet and dry on a block, and we're just going to start gently sanding this out. Okay, and there it is, that's sanded to 240, and I'm really happy with that. There's one or two little patches, there's one just there, one there, and there's a couple just through here where it's not quite fully filled, and they're now currently full of sanding dust, which is making them look worse. So what I'm going to do is clean all that off, and then I'm going to just drop fill it with a bit of super glue and a little bit more of the dust. I might even try spot filling it with a little bit of black super glue as well, just to see how that does. So I might try that first, and if that doesn't work, we'll go back to the other way. But on the whole, I'm really happy with that. I think that's gone very well. Okay, and there they are, sanded down to 240 again, and I am really happy with that. If you look very closely at the moment, you can just see the faintest difference around the outline, but of course I need to sand this down a lot further. I intend to sand this down probably, well, I might even go as far as using a 3000 Trizac pad on it, just to see if I can get this ebony to kind of buff up a bit and just burnish it up into a nice finish. I'm not convinced that I want to spray the front of the headstock, so if I can get it to a kind of nice finish without doing that, I'll stick with that. But so far, that's looking really good. Okay, so I've rubbed this down now to 400 grit. It's feeling nice and smooth. So like I said, I'm going to try and just see if I can take this through the grits and get it to kind of clean up and polish up nicely. This should go quite quickly actually. So I'm going to start with some 600 just on a nice flat block. It shouldn't really take much more than that. And go with a bit of 800. And then without the block, a bit of 1200. You're taking so little off at this point that you're not going to rub any hollows or anything into it. And from there, I'm going to go with one of these 3M Trizac pads. This is a 3000 grit, which might sound a little bit of a step up from a 1200, but with a little bit of rubbing, I'm sure it will come up nicely. Okay, and as you can see, that has taken on a bit of a sheen. It's not dead glossy, and I'm not entirely sure that I'd be satisfied with that finish on the finished guitar. So it might get some lacquer on it. It could just be that if I waxed it or put some oil or something on it, it would bring it out nicer. I'll just have to wait and see. I'm not entirely sure how well ebony would take a lacquer finish, but I think for the time being, that has come out really quite nicely. Very pleased with it. So the next step is to kind of get this headstock shape cut out properly, remove the material to access the truss rod adjustment, and then get it stuck onto the headstock. I'm going to leave that to the next episode. So as always, like if you've liked, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.